And so those people who pass and go on to heaven in every day and age are only those people who find their Imam of the time, the messenger who was divinely appointed, who God veiled himself from behind, the man who God placed his spirit in, the Adam of the time, the Noah of the time, the Moses of the time, the Abraham of the time, the Jesus of the time, the Muhammad of the time, that has the Spirit of God and that acts as the veil of God. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammedin wa ali Muhammad. Al-Imam al-Mehdi'ina wa sallim taslima. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brother Mustafa.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Father.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me here.
So today, Mustafa, we're going to have a mystical discussion surrounding the journey of the believer and the point of creation and the point of life. What is its meaning and what is it that we are supposed to be doing? And I think this is a question that all of the different religions that are on the planet have sought to answer and give a satisfying meaning to. And the human being, so long as he has existed or she has existed, have sought to seek purpose out of their life and to know why it is that they came into existence.
Yes.
There is a mystical book, and it's actually one of the most accurate books that has been preserved and is, has recently come to surface. And it was before that hidden, and it had never been translated before, and it had never been published before. And it was a book that was safeguarded by the Shia for a very long time and the followers of the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam. But even the 12er Shias, mainstream Shiasm, they don't recognize the book, and they didn't even know anything about it. The general population and the scholars in general, and what the contents of the book, what it was talking about were things that and concepts and beliefs and interpretations and narrations that are very unfamiliar, very foreign to the belief set that is held by mainstream 12er Shiasm. It was a book that was compiled by one of the closest companions of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, and that is Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar. Mufaddal ibn Umar, he was known to be a close companion of the sixth Imam, and he would accompany him. And it wasn't just the sixth Imam, by the way. He was a companion to several of the Imams, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and even some narrations state that he lived on until the eighth Imam. And so in this book, he's having these series of conversations with Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam. And he has the opportunity, the rare opportunity, to ask the Imam in settings that are private, where it's just him and the Imam and a few other of the close companions, and also in other settings where it's just him and the Imam. Questions about religion and its secrets and mysteries that are not allowed to get out to the public. And so I'll give you the summary of it, but it's really a fascinating book. And in it, Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam explains to Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar how at the very beginning of creation, God created this shadow light, this shadow of his, and this shadow is like consciousness. It was the very beginnings of creation in its most pure form, and this shadow, which is kind of a shadow of the light of God, he splits it into two. And then the very first thing that happens is that the shadows become aware of one another after they were not aware. And they became aware that they existed after they were unaware that they existed. And that is the only thing that they knew. And in order to educate the shadows, what happened was that God glorified himself. You know, he made the tasbih and takbir and tahleel of his own self, right? So he said, God is great. And he said, all glory be to God. And he said phrases of this sort. Why? In order that the shadows, this consciousness that had now came into existence, would hear these words and then know that there was a God and that God was great, and yes. These are, and learn about it. Okay.
That there was another entity.
That there was another entity, right, other than him, and God. It says in the Quran that he doesn't speak to anybody except from behind a veil. And so at the very beginning, before the establishment of creation, was the establishment and the creation of a veil, where God creates from his own tasbih, which he began to do before he even created the shadow lights. The shadows was turned into a veil. So he creates for himself first this veil out of his own tasbih, and then he creates the shadows, and then he splits the shadows, and then the shadows become aware of one another, but that's all that they know. And then he seeks to educate the shadows by glorifying himself. And how does he glorify himself? How does he speak to the shadows? He does so through the veil. The veil is glorifying God, and the veil is the speech of God. And we spoke about this before when we spoke about the Prophet Muhammad's night journey and how the veil was the Quran. Yes. And so that was the beginning of all creation. And then the shadows were broken down into more and split down into more and more and more. And he creates from the shadows the ghosts, and then he creates from them the souls, and it goes down this mystical tale that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam tells the Mufaddal ibn Umar until we descend down into this physical world that we are in, and each one of us basically contains within us a part of that. But that's irrelevant, and that's for another episode to explain the different worlds that exist and their breakdown and their relationship to this physical world. But what we want to focus on in this episode, what became the purpose of life in this physical realm and world and dimension. So eventually what happened was that God then began to test creation through veiling himself behind something.
Okay.
Yes. And seeing whether or not creation would obey the veil. Right? Yes. So that's what God had sought from creation from the very beginning. He sought to teach creation about himself by means of the veil. And he made the veil a proof over creation, right? And so the veil was the one that was educating the shadows. And the veil was a proof over the shadows. And because the veil was more knowledgeable than the shadows, it was automatically obligatory that the shadows submit to and obey and heed to the call of the veil, and to recognize that that voice that was speaking from behind the veil, it was not just the veil, but rather it was the voice of God speaking to them from behind the veil.
For this creation to identify that this is God speaking.
Yeah.
Right.
So the test became that creation recognize and obey. That's what was required, was that they recognize and obey God,
yes.
and through His veil.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then, what took place in the story of Adam and Eve and Iblis was that, and the angels, was that God creates this creature called Adam, and God sought to take Adam now as a veil. That would be the point whereby He would communicate with creation from behind. Adam became the veil.
Yes.
And God told the angels, if I, fashion him and blow in him from my spirit, and then fall down to him in prostration. So here we know that it is a requirement from the rest of creation to always obey the veil. Okay?
Yes.
In that time, the veil was always apparent. They would know. He was not hidden. They were just required to obey the veil. And hence, God does not hide the fact that Adam is going to become the veil, but rather He informs all of the angels, this is going to be my veil. As soon as I take it as a veil, then immediately fall down and prostrate.
It wasn't a mystery.
Yeah, so God blows into Adam from His spirit. The moment that He does that is the moment that He takes Adam as His veil. And it is also the moment where the veil begins to speak. And really what's speaking is that which is behind the veil. And the veil, once again, is more knowledgeable than the rest of creation. Adam knew the names of all things, and he had authority, and it was obligatory for all creatures to prostrate. But then Iblis refused to. When Iblis refused to and rebelled, it became the first time that there was a direct refusal and rebellion against the veil of God. And that became a very big problem.
That was a shocker.
It was a shocker, I think, to all of creation, not a shocker to God. And it became, it resulted in a very big test for the rest of humanity. So Iblis succeeded in causing the veil to fall, and he rejected the veil, and he discredited or brought down the credibility a little bit of the veil.
Right, when Adam ate from the apple.
Exactly, when Adam ate from the tree.
Right.
And Iblis had his own idea, of where God should go or what he should take as a veil. He thought that he knew best. And God, nobody can tell him what to do, and nobody can know more than him, and nobody can force him to take something as a veil. And so Iblis tells Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he tells Mufaddal ibn Umar that basically Iblis, he has this discussion with God whereby he tells him, God, if you take anything else as a veil, I will worship you, through that veil. Take anything, but just not Adam. And then Iblis went forward and he began to prostrate to all other things except for Adam. So he prostrates to the sun, he prostrates to the moon, he prostrates to a magnificent tree, he prostrates to all other things, hoping that God would have accepted his prayer and taken one of these things as a veil.
Except for Adam,
other than Adam, except for Adam. He refused to do that.
Wow.
And God says, by my might and by my glory, I will not accept any of your deeds or any of your worship except if you worship me through the door and through the veil that I have appointed.
All right.
Okay. when God saw the disobedience of creation, and when he saw the insistence on Iblis to fight against the veil and to murder it and to make it fall, God began to hide himself. His veil became a matter of a hidden matter, a matter that was kept secret, that was private, rather than an announced matter.
Right.
Do you understand?
Yes, not like Adam's days when he would say it.
Not like in Adam's days. So Adam and Iblis and Eve, they all get sent down to the earth. Iblis and his descendants, Cain and all of those disbelievers, were hell-bent on following in the footsteps of Iblis and taking it even to the next level and murdering and skinning alive and fighting against the veil and all those who took the veil as a proof over them. And it became necessary that the believers use taqiyya and hide their faith and be secret about their beliefs and their recognition of the veil in order to protect the veil and to protect the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to protect their own selves. Yeah. And that became the big test. And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam tells Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar that God decided to also show creation, each and every one of them, their degree, lest they disbelieve in God or object to the status that they obtain. It became one big giant test whereby God gathers all of creation, he puts them on the planet Earth, and then he hides himself in every day and age behind one veil. And from behind that veil, he calls out to creation, and all of those who respond to his call are the angels, and all of those who reject his call are the devil. And as much as they have faith and as fast as they respond to his call, that would end up being their degree.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the test is not of creation is not mainly it's mainly finding that God behind the veil. That
became the entire point of religion, and that became all of religion, and that became the reason why we say religion is a man.
Right.
Because all of religion is just about finding
God,
the veil of God. God is hidden amongst creation, and our mission in this life is just to know God. And that's why God says in the hadith, I was a treasure that was hidden, and I created creation in order that they may know me.
Yes.
Right? So it became the whole point of creation is that we know God, and we can only know God by finding his voice amongst all of the creatures that are calling to different paths and different ways. Yeah. And so those people who pass and go on to heaven in every day and age are only those people who find their imam of the time. And their imam of the time is the veil of the time. The messenger who was divinely appointed, who God veiled himself from behind, the man who God placed his spirit in, the Adam of the time, the Noah of the time, the Moses of the time, the Abraham of the time, the Jesus of the time, the Muhammad of the time, that has the spirit of God and that acts as the veil of God. All those who recognize him and pledge allegiance to him and follow him and believe in him, those are the ones whom are the angels, and those are the ones whom will leave this earth and go back up to be amongst the angels and the heavenly host. And all of those whom reject the veil and fight against the veil are their source is Iblis, and their likeness is the likeness of Iblis and all of those who fell with Iblis and followed in his footsteps.
Even if all good works have been done. If you don't find God, then you're really upon nothing, no matter what you do.
No, you have to find the Imam of the time. And that's why there's hadiths that state that the love of Ali is a good deed that no bad deed can harm.
Right.
And the hatred of Ali is a bad deed that no good deed, could benefit. Because the point is that in order for your prayer to be accepted, or your fasting to be accepted, or your zakat, or any of your good works to be accepted, it has to be after you find and accept the veil, because it's the veil's voice that you're supposed to be following. And it is the veil that is a proof over you, and it's the only way that you can know God is through the veil. Whoever knows the veil knows God, and whoever is ignorant of the veil is ignorant of God. And so it doesn't make sense that somebody would go into paradise with good deeds when they don't even know God. Where are they going to go? They have to know God in order to be accepted, to be amongst God. And so the believers then, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam tells Mufaddal in another part of this book, he informs them, he informs Mufaddal ibn Umar that there are varying degrees that a believer will reach on his path to knowing the veil and being obedient. So not everybody that knows the veil is the same in faith. And Mufaddal at one point, he's asking Imam Sadiq about these ranks and these degrees, and we briefly mentioned them in the episode that I did with Dr. Irfan about the secret teachings in Islam, and where we touched upon also the night journey of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how the Prophet Muhammad had become the veil. And so Al-Mufaddal is asking Imam Sadiq about this. Imam Sadiq is responding to him, and he says that the very first degree that the tested believer reaches. So before that, there are varying degrees of people that might recognize part of the teachings of the veil as true, but they don't recognize the veil himself as being the Imam of the time or being the voice of God. Just like we have now Sunnis that believe in the religion of Muhammad. Yeah,
right.
They recognize that it's true, but they don't believe in the Muhammad of their time or their Adam of their time.
Right.
And he said that the first degree, after being one of those people that recognize parts of it but don't accept the totality of it, is a believer whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested his heart for faith. And that is a reference to the narration of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam that says that our matter is a hard one and it's a difficult one. Nobody can handle it except for a prophet messenger or a close angel or a believer that God has tested his heart for faith. Okay?
Right.
So the first degree of being a true believer is to be a believer that God has tested his heart for faith.
Like you reach that level of understanding to begin to be tested.
To begin to be tested.
Right.
And to have been tested and to have succeeded in that test. The next degree after that is the degree. And the degree, by the way, of the tested believer, that is the degree of a prophet. Okay. So we spoke before about the person, how he can elevate to become at the rank of a prophet. The tested believer is the rank of a prophet, is the rank of a close angel. And that's why the hadith says that, that nobody can handle our matter except for these three.
Yes.
So once you reach to the degree of being a believer that his heart has been tested for faith, you also have reached to the rank of prophethood. And you are like an angel that prostrated to Adam and has full blind obedience and submission to the veil, and you recognize him. And that is the rank that many of the companions they reached, and that's why you find in many of the mystical hadiths that have been hidden from the Ahlul Bayt, you'll find Imam Sadiq, he's sitting around with his companions and he goes by each and every one of them and says to them, peace be upon you, O Abraham, peace be upon you, O Jonah, peace be upon you, O Jacob. And that's an indication that these prophets and messengers had returned as those close believers that had reached that rank of closeness to them. Then the next rank after that, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says it's the rank of the naqib, the chieftain, one of the nuqaba. And in every day and age, there are 12 people that reach that. There are 12 seats that those believers, can reach and become one of those. And in the time of Jesus, it was the 12 disciples or the 12 apostles that had reached that rank. And it's a rank that's above all of the rest. And the people that reach that rank, they serve as kind of like the chiefs of the rest of the angels, or the chiefs of the rest of the prophets.
Yeah, I remember a hadith mentioning
they're the leaders of the companions. They're the leaders of the believers. They're the 12 pillars of the Hajj. And there's a hadith that says that for each and every prophet and messenger, and for each and every imam, there are always 12 close companions that are with them.
Yeah.
Is that the hadith?
That's the hadith I was going to say.
And then Al-Mufaddal asks Imam Sadiq, okay, well, is there a rank that's after that? And then basically he says, no, now you're going to get into al-istifa. That's the rank that would come after that. As far as the believers go, the final rank that you can reach is to be one of those 12. That is the epitome of faith. That's when you know that you really, really made it. That if you were living in the time of Jesus, you could have been a person that thought that Jesus was a righteous person. That's a degree of faith, a very simple one. But it's better than being a non-believer. Other people, they became from Jesus' 72 disciples. That was a huge degree of faith, right?
To be from
that's a degree of that's a degree of being a believer that was tested. His heart was tested for faith, and Jesus, he sent forward these 72 individuals to go forward in the lands and call people to him, just like God would send the prophets and the messengers, and he would send them ahead of time to different cities before Jesus's arrival to kind of pave the way and give dawah before he would arrive. And we know that these numbers of 70 or 72 exist with the different prophets and messengers. You had a number like that went up with Moses on the mount when they went to, when Moses had requested to see God, and then God manifested himself, and all of Moses and his companions were strucken and they fell down. And there's a narration that states that all of those that went up on the mount with Moses and were resurrected, that all of them were prophets. And there's another narration that states that one of the companions of Imam Sadiq, whom is a very controversial one, some people declare him to be a heretic, while others declare him to be one of the closest companions of Imam Sadiq, and that is Abu al-Khattab. Abu al-Khattab, at one point, he goes forward, and he makes this rise where he has with him about 70 or 72 individuals, and they all get martyred, they all get killed fighting against the oppressor. And when they went back and they told some of the companions, told Imam Sadiq swears by Allah that all of those that got martyred and Abu al-Khattab were prophet messengers. And so you see here Imam Sadiq in one place, he's saying that the first degree of being a true believer is that degree of being a tested believer and a prophet messenger. And we find all of these, this mass group of at least 70, 72 that are with each and every prophet, messenger, and companion, and they're also being described as prophets or messengers. And then you have the best of them, the leaders of them, the ones that reach to the final rank of being a close believer are those whom are the 12 in every time and age. And they're mentioned also the 12. The 12 chieftains are mentioned in the narrations of the Ahl Bayt as being the closest companions to the Kaim, that there's these 12 as well that are around him. They serve as his disciples. And they obey him in all things, and they do not, doubt, nor do they fall away. And in many of the scenes, while the rest of the 313 apostate, it's always these 12 that remain firm by the side of the Qaim. So that's like the epitome of faith, to reach that degree of being a prophet, messenger, close believer that does not apostate and always sticks next to the Imam of the time. They don't take vacations, they don't take breaks, they don't sleep, they don't, their focus is him.
I think it was also in Karbala, was like the 72.
Exactly. You also have that number appearing, and it appears a lot in many other places as well, with many other prophets and messengers. But you also have there the 72 that are in Karbala with Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And so then there, Mufaddal asks Imam Sadiq, okay, well, what after that? He says, well, then after that, it would be the degree of istifa, of being like chosen now. Inna Allah astafa Adam wa Nuhan wa Ali Ibrahim wa Ali Imran ala al-alamin. Verily, God chose Adam and Noah and the family of Imran and the family of Abraham and the family of Imran over all of the worlds. Okay? And he says that this degree is the degree of being from the Zurriya, from being from the progeny. It's our degree. It's the degree of the Ahl Bayt, the people of the house. After that, so in this is many secrets, because then that khalas, after the being the best of the believer, then the only thing after that is to be from the Ahl Bayt. And some companions actually succeeded in elevating to that, like Salman al-Farisi, when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he's from us, the Ahl Bayt, and they said that about other companions as well. And it gives an indication when Imam Sadiq quotes that verse, that Adam and Noah and Abraham and Jesus, who's from the family of Imran, they're all from the people and the family of Abraham. There's individuals like Ismail who all managed to reach the rank of being from the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And these individuals that reach that rank, we spoke about it before, and we talked about how the rank that's above a prophet messenger is the rank of an imam. And so we know now that those people that reached the rank of being an imam were also at the rank of being from the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam. And there's a great secret about that when we talk about the Mehdis, because in that time, and I'll just give people a little bit of a gem and an insight to that. What happens is that the Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, in this day and age, he is the return of the Prophet Muhammad.
Subhanallah.
And Imam al-Mahdi, who's the return of the Prophet Muhammad, he's the reincarnation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After him come these 12 Mahdis. And these 12 Mahdis that come and are sent forward by the Prophet Muhammad are the reincarnations of Imam Ali and Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein And the Prophet Muhammad himself also returns as one of the Mahdis as well. And at the same time, other prophet messengers that reached to the rank of imamate and became from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they too are sent forward as these Mahdis. So you have the Prophet Jesus, for example. He is from the Ahlul Bayt, and he is one of the Mahdis. He returns as one of the Mahdis and rules the earth as a Mahdi. You have Abraham, who rules the world as a Mahdi. You have Noah. You have Adam, who comes forward. He was a companion of a covenant. You have Moses, who returns. So you have all of the Ahl Kisa, plus all of the Ulil Azm prophets, or prophets that bore a covenant. They return as Mahdis, in addition to a few of the prophet messengers that their works in that time, during their lifetime and over the course of their incarnations, elevated them to be from the household or the rank of an imam, or from the household of the Prophet Muhammad, and they managed to be sent back as one of the Mahdis. And from them, for example, is the Prophet Ismail alayhi salam. Another one of them is the Prophet Aaron, the vicegerent of Moses. He also became one of the Mahdis, and also the Prophet Joseph became one of the Mahdis. And so the rank that's after that, after the completed believer, one of the 12, becomes that you be one of the people of the house.
Right.
All right?
Yes. So it's
and then go ahead.
It's kind of like a continuation. It never ends. You're always coming back. You're always being tested again to elevate higher and higher. Your purpose is in every incarnation to get close to God. The more you
to do better. You know, right. Some people, they come back and they recognize their imam of the time, but they short came with him. They didn't obey him totally, or they had doubt, or they didn't fulfill their obligations, you know. So they come back again and they recognize the veil again, but this time they do better and they have higher faith and they correct the mistakes that they did until they complete that which God wanted them to complete in terms of knowing Him and worshiping Him through the veil. And then, Mufaddal asks, Imam Sadiq, okay, well, is there a level after that, after the dhurriya? Like, where would they go after the progeny, you know? Yeah. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, yes, there is. And that's the final degree. And that is the degree of the veil, the hijab. And that is the degree that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and his family reached, where he himself became the veil. And after you become the veil, it's really you now who is managing all of creation, and you're sending forward the prophets and the messengers. And that's why we said that after the Prophet Muhammad disintegrated in the veil, he became the one who is, sending now forward the messengers and the Mahdis, and he is the one who is kind of taking care of the affairs of the world.
It really is mind-blowing to know that you're here on earth for spiritual elevation, and the final destination is something which is really mind-blowing. Like it is extreme.
And there's something interesting too, because Imam Sadiq is asked by Mufaddal, about, okay, well, when he reaches these ranks, of high knowing, and recognizing the veil and submission to the veil, what happens there? Is he still required to worship through the apparent acts of worship, like through prayer, through fasting, the month of Ramadan, through giving charity and zakat? And Imam Sadiq says, absolutely not. The Quran says, and verily to your Lord is al-muntaha, the ending, the finality, the totality, the goal is to reach your Lord.
Right.
So once a person reaches his Lord, all of these chains that were placed upon the believer, these requirements that he has to do in life, whether it's to pray the 5 prayers or to, these apparent acts of worship, all of them become obsolete. And the believer, because he's complete now and he recognized the veil, he becomes free. And so the chains of the jurisprudence are lifted off of him. He goes from being a servant, an abd, to being a freed servant. A freed servant. Right. And a freed servant, the master doesn't require of him any work anymore. The work is only given to the shortcomers. The work is only given to the people who are still slaves. And that's why God forces, and makes it obligatory that the Muslims either do this or they're out of the fold of Islam. And if they're out of the fold of Islam, then they're considered to be disbelievers, right? And then that's a whole nother conversation on their rights and how and all of that. And so the person, though, who recognizes the veil, he's no longer a slave. He becomes now a friend. He becomes now free. He's reached his final destination. He's done what he's supposed to do. And God allows him to enjoy, and he becomes like the angels above, and he gets to live the rest of his life on earth as he would in paradise. Now, because he did the deeds of the angels, and rather the deed of a human being who manages to pass this test on earth is worth more and becomes better than the deeds of the angels above, because God told the angels, that to prostrate to Adam, but he didn't tell.
He made it apparent then.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't make it apparent. It was hidden here. And so the human being who manages to reach that level, he gets to abide now and live by a different set of rules. Those rules that the angels live with in paradise, he gets to live with here. And so he becomes free.
It's like it's a heaven on earth kind of
becomes living. He lives a heaven on earth. So the obvious implication there as well is that he don't have to pray anymore, but he doesn't have to fast. Those things which were made haram on him before are now halal and permissible, because there's nothing that you wish for in paradise except that it's granted for you.
Yes.
Those things which were haram here for the person who's in paradise, it's halal.
Right.
That's why you find in the Quran that there are rivers of wine in paradise that are available for the believer, but on earth it's haram for the believer. Yes. So the believer that reaches the final destination on earth and knows God, and he becomes freed by the Imam. He can't free himself. The veil, the Imam has to determine, when he reached to that level of true faith, because it's not just by words, it's by actions. And then the Imam will free the believer. The veil will free the believer, and it's really God that's freeing him, because God is the one that's speaking from behind him. And
So these acts of worship, many of the Muslims around the world will say, well, we do pray, we do fast, we do all of these things, but it's this one thing that it's the main thing.
If you're praying, or if you're fasting, or if you're doing these apparent acts of worship, according to Imam Sadiq, like, you're still a shortcomer. You're not even a true believer.
Because you're not following.
So these people think that when they're praying, that they're going to go to paradise, and that this is the epitome of faith, when it's actually the opposite. Like, it's an indication that you have no idea what you're doing, and God is treating you as an ignorant slave until you recognize his voice, and you manage to reach him and be freed by him on earth. God, as he is always present in the heavens, he is always present on earth. And God is always present on earth by veiling himself behind a man, and that is the totality and the true religion. And people should, Imam Sadiq says that once the believer frees himself, by obedience and worship of God and recognition of the veil, that he becomes like the angels that are above. And there was this really cool conversation that took place where Imam al-Mufaddal ibn Umar, he's sitting with Imam al-Sadiq and he's saying, okay, well, who is like that? Like, who is like that? Do I know anybody like that? And Imam al-Sadiq says, by Allah, you know. And you've seen them and you've eaten with them. Your fellow believing brothers that have reached these ranks, but they didn't tell you because you hadn't reached their rank yet. So they kept it secret. You know, it was all done in taqiyya. Salman had reached that degree and he was free, but Abu Dhar hadn't. So if Abu Dhar knew what was in the heart of Salman, he would have killed him.
Okay.
Because Salman now he's free, he's doing all these things, he believes all these things, and he's not abiding by the Sharia, and he's doing those which are haram, and he's living a whole different life. If Abu Dhar knew what was taking place with Salman, he would have killed him. And so Al-Mufaddal is like, who? And then at that moment, there walks in this man into the room, and he stands behind Al-Mufaddal. And then Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam asks al-Mufaddal about that man. And he says, that's my brother Abu al-Khattab.
Right, yes.
And then Imam al-Sadiq asks Abu al-Khattab to identify himself. And Abu al-Khattab reveals that in reality, he's Gabriel.
Yes. SubhanAllah, this is powerful hadith. It is intense.
And so Gabriel is accompanying the veil in every day and age. And the prophets and the messengers, they accompany, and the angels, they accompany the veil in every day and age. And that's why you have that the hadith say that the Kaim'i has with him on his right and on his left, Gabriel and Michael.
And Raphael as well.
And Raphael from behind him.
Right.
And they have the prophets and the messengers that have returned. And you have Jesus in his time. And during the scene of the transfiguration of Christ, he has on his right and on his left Moses and Elijah. Yeah? So those believers that become true unifiers and monotheists that recognize where the veil is and they only obey the veil. That's what it means to be a monotheist. And a unifier, somebody who only, worships God through one man. That is true monotheism. To not take religion from any other man, but only from one. La ilaha illallah means that there's only one God above, and he's only behind one veil, one man, and that's the Adam of the time.
It's recognition of God.
It's recognition of God through him. And so then Abu al-Khattab, having identified himself as Gabriel, he proceeds to inform and reveal to Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar as well as Imam al-Sadiq about how, Gabriel goes forth in the lands and he rises to the heavens and comes down and he serves between the hands of the Imam. And then Abu al-Khattab also, after having reached this degree and recognizing the soul that was within him, began to speak about all of the prophets and the messengers that he was with. And he says, I'm the companion of so-and-so, and I'm the companion of so-and-so. I was the companion of Joseph in the well, and I was the companion of Moses when he did this, and this prophet and that prophet. And so that is the hero's journey. That's the journey of the believer. First, he has to search out and find where the voice is coming from, and then his obedience has to be perfected to such a degree that he reaches that level or that rank of prophethood. And then after that, he can elevate to become one of the chieftains, one of the disciples that never apostate. And then when they reach the degree of prophethood or to the degree of being a chieftain, that's when the Imam can wipe over their heads and remind them and inform them of their names, like Adam informed the angels of their names when God asked him to. And informing them of their names means informing them of their incarnations. Right? And so And so the Imam will inform Abu Khattab that he's Gabriel, or inform, this person, Mufaddal ibn Umar, that he's Jacob, or inform this individual that he is that. And then little by little, they'll regain their memories and continue to serve. And then the believer can even work harder than that and become one of the people of the house. Just like, Simon Peter also elevated out of the 12 disciples and ended up being the successor and the vicegerent of Jesus Christ, right? He became a Hajjah. And the same thing can happen when you're at the level of the chieftains. And then eventually the goal for all those who reached to the degree of being from the Ahl Bayt is to become the veil themselves. And each person who is sent in every day and age, serves as that. So we'll stop at that point so as to not make the episode too long, but there's so much more that we could say about this, which we'll mention inshallah in future episodes. Thank you so much for joining me today, Mustafa, and speaking to me about this topic. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that inshallah we delivered it in a way that was clear and simple for everybody to understand.
Inshallah. I hope people get the idea and understand God never wanted them to be slaves. He put them here so that He can free them. They just need to find Him, and they would be freed. And He just wants all goodness for them.
Yes, He wants people to be free, but He places these chains on them in order that they not go further astray.
Right.
And so He tells them, no, you have to do this, and you abstain from the alcohol, because if you drink the alcohol and you don't even know the veil, you'll never know the veil. Right. Keep on praying and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And actually it's obligatory for you to pray, because if you don't pray now, then you're going to go on a different path that's really far, and you'll never recognize the veil of Allah. But once they recognize the veil, then all of this stuff is not necessary anymore.
It's the first step towards Him.
Exactly. It's those first steps towards Him.
Yes, well, thank you so much.
God bless you. Assalamu alaikum.